We might get done with this today. It's not a particularly long lecture. It just depends on how many stories I tell. So we're in what is part one of Jesus teaching that he is the bread of life. And I'm going to give you an outline, but the second three parts of the outline we won't get to until the next chapter. So both chapters 16 and 17 are about this teaching that Jesus gave in the synagogue at Capernaum about him being the bread of life. And I'll tell you, in the second part of that, it's going to get a little weird. And the people are going to get a little weirded out by what he has to say as well. So we'll talk about that in coming days. So for now, we're just going to read verses 22 through 32 and talk about those. So this is what it says. On the next day, so the day after the feeding of the 5,000, the crowd that remained on the other side of the sea saw that there had been only one boat there, and that Jesus had not entered, so that the boat that the disciples took had not entered the boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone away alone. Other boats from Tiberias came near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum seeking Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea in Capernaum, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Jesus answered them, Truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For on him God the Father has set his seal. Then they said to him, What must we do to be doing the works of God? Jesus answered them, This is the work of God, that you believe in whom he sent. So they said to him, Then what sign do you do so that we may see and believe you? What work do you perform? Our fathers ate manna in the wilderness, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus then said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. So that's the first part of this passage, and we'll pick up later on the rest of it. But here's the outline for what we'll be studying in these two lessons. So we'll talk about the setting, the command, the unbelief, and the true bread. Well, the first three are the ones that we'll do in this lesson, and then the true bread, the living bread, the broken bread, and then the results at the end. Then let's start with the setting. On the next day, the crowd that remained on the other side of the sea saw that there had only been one boat there, and that Jesus had not entered the boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone away alone. Other boats from Tiberias came near the place where the Lord had eaten the bread, and they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum seeking Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? So the setting is in Capernaum and in the synagogue at Capernaum. We don't find that out until actually verse 59. We're right at the end of this passage. But that's where he was. So I want to talk a little bit about the location here. The place was the synagogue of Capernaum. And verse 59 says, Jesus said these things in the synagogue as he taught at Capernaum. Now you've seen this picture before. This is the remains of the synagogue at Capernaum. Most sizable cities or towns in Israel had synagogues. This one was built in the 3rd century. So this would not have been the synagogue that Jesus spoke in this chapter. But it would have been just beneath that. And we'll see more pictures later that show that part of the synagogue. So according to John 6, 16, 17, and 22, Capernaum is located where Capernaum is located in relation to the 5,000. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to look at, it says it's on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. Now that could be a lot of different places, right? I mean, you've got Capernaum way up at the top. The other side of the sea could be down in the south. It could be on either side. Anything where you have to take it by water. So anything past Tagba down and past Bethsaida down could have been where they were for the feeding of the 5,000. We don't know for sure. People make guesses based on context clues, but we don't really know for sure. So I'm going to give you some options of where it was. We do know some things about the place, like it was on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. But it could have been several places. It could have been in the south, down here. The problem with that is that nowhere in the Bible is Jesus recorded as being in that part of the Sea of Galilee. So we never see in any of the Gospels that he has visited that part of Israel. Could he have? Yes. And this is kind of what we think of when we say, oh, on the other side of the sea must be down south. But in their parlance, anything that would have had to been by boat could be the other side. So it could be there, but I don't think it is. It could have been on the eastern side of the shore. So over in Gentile territory, but I'm not sure that's right either. There are ancient harbors that have been discovered there, but I don't think it's there either. Because it says in Luke that it was in a desert place near the city of Bethsaida. And that's not really near the city of Bethsaida. So it also could be here, which is where Bethsaida is. And that's a possibility. And there are some, you can see the green there, right, of Bethsaida. And there's hills there. And so that is a possibility. And it could have been somewhere else. We don't know for sure. So I don't even know why they put these up here, but the way that Jesus got there, if he was in Bethsaida, would have been that kind of a route across that top part of the sea. Looking around Bethsaida, we do see some areas that are more desert-like, but we also see a lot of green, grassy places, and John describes it as a green, grassy place, like a slope going down to the sea. And that is definitely true at Bethsaida. And according to John 6, 17, and 18, after the feeding of the 5,000, the disciples rowed back over the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, and the winds were blowing against them. Do you remember me telling you about how the winds blow through that cavern that we saw and over the Sea of Galilee, and storms can come up really quickly? Do you remember that? Well, those winds would have been coming from that direction. So that would again lead to thinking that somewhere near Bethsaida would be the place of the feeding of the 5,000. Again, we don't know for sure. If you go on a trip to Israel, they'll take you to a place near Bethsaida and say this is where the feeding of the 5,000 took place, and that's possible, but we don't know for certain. It could have been there. It could have been someplace else. What we do know for sure is that he ended up in Capernaum. And so the people went to Capernaum to find Jesus. They were looking for Jesus. This is a picture of kind of that part of the sea. That's where Bethsaida would be, and that's where Capernaum would be on the other. So he's in the synagogue, he's teaching. And so he's in the synagogue teaching, and I want to talk a little bit about. I should probably go back to this. That the next morning the people took the same path that Jesus did across the sea. They also went by boat. Although Jesus took a little stroll on the water before he got in the boat, but that was a little bit different than everybody else. And then they all end up in Capernaum. So this is kind of a mock-up of what the synagogue would have looked like. The place where Jesus was there is not intact now, as I already told you. But they found him in the synagogue, teaching in the synagogue, and there are remains of those teaching of that synagogue that can be seen today. So this is the outer side of that synagogue, and you can see that white sort of brick that's there, and we saw it in the other picture. You can see darker rock down below. It gets a little more obvious here. So you see the remains of the 3rd century synagogue are white. That kind of stone is not found in Capernaum. Capernaum is in a volcanic area, or what was a volcanic area. And so that rock, that stone, would have been imported from someplace else. The black rocks, the dark rocks, those are called black basalt. They're volcanic kinds of rocks, and they're indigenous to Capernaum. So do you see at the bottom right here? You see this here? This would have been underneath that synagogue, the foundation of the synagogue in which Jesus taught this lesson in Capernaum. So the synagogue that you see today, the remains of that white synagogue, are on top of what would have been the synagogue that Jesus taught in. And Jesus would have been there many times because Capernaum, remember, was his earthly headquarters.